Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing a video all about the books that help me find my way. If you watched my last currently reading video, you know that there are a couple of stressful things that are going on in my life right now, so I thought that this was a really timely video to make. These are kind of all the books that I fall back on and that I look to and that have really shaped me into the person that I am today, and I always find solace in reading whenever anything is going on. I was really excited when Penguin Random House approached me about this video. They are sponsoring this, and it is in honor of Gayle Forman's new book, I Have Lost My Way. I've been really looking forward to reading this one because I really love all of Gayle's other books. This book follows three main characters named Freya, Haroon, and Nathaniel. Each of them has something that is going on in their personal lives that they've kind of lost, and they're trying to figure out like where they're gonna go from here. And then there's some kind of accident that happens that brings the three of them together, and I'm imagining that it's gonna be toward the end of the book that we find out how everything's going to be kind of interconnected. But it sounds like a really beautiful story of friendship and loss and how to cope with loss. It also takes place in New York City, which is one of the reasons that I'm also really excited to read it because it's like my hometown. But I have been highly anticipating this one. As I said, I loved Gayle's other books, so I'm really excited for this. And also Penguin has an amazing pre-order deal that is going on with this book. So if you pre-order a copy of I Have Lost My Way, you can submit your receipt to Penguin, and I'll leave a link down below where you can do that. And then you have the choice of getting either a free copy of If I Stay or Just One Day, which is like amazing. I've never seen a pre-order deal where you submit that you pre-ordered a book and then you get another book for free. I think that's like one of the best pre-order deals that I have ever seen. I definitely recommend doing so. I myself cannot wait to read this one. I'm planning on doing so very, very soon. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to get the obvious one out of the way, and that is the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. This is a series that I grew up with. I was the same age as the characters until there was that like gap between the fourth and fifth books, but I feel like these characters are so integral to who I am as a person because I saw them grow, I saw them develop, and I was going through my own things at the same time. And I loved seeing the huge like overall theme of good versus evil, and seeing how, you know, sometimes doing the right thing isn't always the easy thing, it's what should be done. And I feel like it also taught me a lot about friendship. I loved the friendship between Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and then obviously Luna Lovegood was like my kindred spirit when she showed up. This is like a series that I just come back to time after time after time, and it's really the series that got me very interested in fantasy. Now I largely read mostly fantasy, and I would definitely accredit that to Harry Potter. It was so magical and it was such a wonderful experience, and to this, I've been reading these since I was 11, and to this day I still go back and reread them constantly. I still buy every book that they put out, which is like getting ridiculous. There's so many now, but I love it. It's just such a wonderful series, and this is definitely like closest to my heart of any book. The next book on my list is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This is a book that I read in high school, and I felt like Charlie was such a relatable character. He was somebody that was always more on the shy and introverted side, which is how I always was. He was really just unlike any other character that I had ever read about, especially at that time in my life. When I was younger, I feel like it had been a trend. The books that were written were always about like that special snowflake kid, and Charlie was so normal and so like shy and just afraid of getting involved in kind of living life that it was really beneficial to see a character like that and to see him, you know, start making friends and start branching out and start doing things and start learning that okay to be different. It doesn't matter if you're not the same as everyone else. That's kind of what makes everything interesting. I actually have not read this one in quite a while, and now that I'm talking about it, I definitely want to do a reread because this had meant so much to me in high school. Next on my list is actually another one of Gayle Forman's books, and that is If I Stay. When I first read this one, I was just completely in tears. I felt like this book had a really big impact on me, and it was just so well done and so sad because you're following this girl Mia who just got into a horrible car accident with the rest of her family. All of them have passed away, and she's currently in a coma. She is seeing life that's going on around her. She's kind of deciding whether she wants to go ahead and keep fighting even though it's gonna be really hard for her, or if she just wants to give up. Oh, my cake is probably ready now. I'll be right back. Sorry, I was making a chocolate chip cookie cake and it was finished, so I had to go grab it out of the oven. Anyway, back to this book. I felt like I learned a lot in this one because I am someone who, my family means like absolutely everything to me, and I cannot possibly imagine what it would be like to go through and experience life without them. I talk to my mom on the phone literally every single day. I'm just like, I'm so close with them. And for Mia to have also been close with her family and then to lose them, and then to have the choice of potentially going and being with them, whatever comes next, or coming back to Earth and fighting through and everything, like, oh man, there were so many chapters where I was just crying and crying and crying, and I feel like I learned a lot from this book about what it means to like keep fighting and to not give up. Yeah, this was a really powerful read, which is also why I'm really excited to read her new book, because I loved this one so much. The next book on my list is Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. My copy is somewhere in that pile. I don't think I can find it right now. This book had probably one of the biggest impacts on me of any of the books that I've ever read. I read it in one sitting the day that it came out, and I have never eaten meat since. That's just a pretty lasting impression. I have been a vegetarian for, let's see. So it was published on November 2nd of 2009. So as of November 2nd this year, this like coming year, I will have been a vegetarian for 9 years, which means that next year is my 10-year anniversary, which is insane because I remember when I first read this, when I first felt so impacted by everything that he said in this book, my family, not my immediate family, but one judgy aunt that is no longer in the family was like, this is a phase. You're never gonna be a vegetarian for a long time. Like, you're just gonna do it for a week and whatever. And that was so not the case, clearly, because I'm going on 9 years. So I don't think that it's a phase. But I really liked Eating Animals because the way that it was told was not at all like demonizing people that eat meat. It was that Jonathan Safran Foer and his wife were having their first child, and he just really wanted to find out like what is the best diet for a person to have, because he didn't want to put anything harmful into his son. So you learned a lot about the meat industry, you learned a lot about all of the different kinds of like hormones and things that are in meat, which I didn't want that in my body. So that's why I chose to stop eating meat. I don't care at all if other people eat meat in front of me. Go for it. That doesn't bother me. I just personally don't want those chemicals in my own body. As I said, very lasting effect. The next two books on my list I'm going to kind of group together, and you'll see why in just a moment. So the first one is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This is the first book that I ever read where I really felt that anxiety was portrayed within something that I had read. I had never seen that before, but I felt like Kath was so similar to me, and I really enjoyed seeing the world from her perspective and feeling like somebody understood me. And also she shares the same love, like she was obsessed with the Simon Snow series and I was obsessed with the Harry Potter series, so she was even more relatable on that level as well. And the second book that I'm also grouping in here is Girl Against the Universe by Paula Stokes. This I read a year or two ago now. This is, for me, the absolute most accurate representation of anxiety that I've ever read in any book. It's closest to what I myself experience. I don't necessarily think that I am bad luck, that I cause bad luck for other people, but I definitely do think about like all of the potential bad things that can happen if I go and like do something instead of stay home and be safe here. Both of these just really helped me and really helped me feel understood, which I think is so important when you're reading, because you obviously want to see somebody that is in your own situation so that you can learn from them, and possibly there might be something that you find in there that could help you improve yourself. It's also great to read about people from different walks of life as well, but there are those times where you do want to read something where it's most reflective of yourself, and I just really found that in both of these books. Next on my list is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This is one that I read, I think 2 years ago now. This had a really big impact on me because both of my grandparents grew up in Germany during World War II, and I have grown up hearing their stories, and this helped me like further understand them. And the fact that Liesel had such a similar experience to my grandfather's experience specifically, I think that that also had a big impact on me, because I just felt like the stories were so close to stories that he had told me. And then reading reading it from her perspective, falling into the book, because when I hear my grandfather's stories, they're obviously like crazy impactful because they're true and they're horrible, but I'm picturing him going through it and then reading Liesel's. I don't know if other people feel this, but sometimes while I'm reading, I feel like I think of the main character as myself. So like being in that situation, I was just like, whoa. During World War II, my grandfather actually hid a family of Jewish people in his attic, and that was obviously very scary when the Nazis would come and search your house. So that also was like reflected in this book, and I just hadn't ever read that before. And I also really appreciate this one for how it touches upon the power of books and the power of knowledge. It was just so well written. It was so beautiful. It was such a great story, and I feel like it really touched me, and it's one that I still think about. And I think that that's the mark of a good book, is something that, you know, you finish reading and then even as years pass, you still end up thinking about it. And The Book Thief is definitely one of those for me. This is another recent read that has really, really stuck with me, and that is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. I wish that I would have read this series as a child, but reading it now, I feel like Anne is one of the best characters that I've ever read about in all of literature. I think that she just has this wild imagination, and just the spirit of Anne just captures like the magic of childhood, and I love the way that Anne views nature. I love how everything to her is either the greatest thing in the world or like the worst thing in the world, and she's just really trying her best to be a good person and do good things, but sometimes there are variables that you can't control. She is just hilarious. If I ever have a child, I would want her to be exactly like Anne, because Anne is just so amazing. But yeah, it's really just her whimsy and her view of nature and everything that I feel like is so relatable for me, and she kind of reminds me that I never want to lose that side of myself. I never want to lose that imagination. I never want to lose that sense of fun, carefreeness that she has once she is with her adopted parents. And I just really love this one, and I know that I'm going to be rereading it for years and years and years to come. The next book on my list is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This one is an interesting one for me to have on here because The Hunger Games was not one of my favorite books. I thought that it was great and it was really fast paced, but I wanted it to be like 200 pages longer at least. But I think that there was just such an important message in this book, and there was so much that I took away from it that is what makes it worthy of being on this list for me. I think The Hunger Games was one of the first times where the story was accessible and relatable enough for me to understand that the people in power might not always be right, and this is super timely right now. And just because a government tells you that things are a certain way or should be a certain way doesn't mean that it's the right way, and it doesn't mean that things can't change if people band together and work with one another to create a better world for everyone. I really admired Katniss in the beginning, that moment where she steps up so that she can protect her younger sister Prim. That was such a big moment because she's sacrificing everything for her family, and then she goes on further to sacrifice everything for the families of everyone in those districts that are just not treated the way that they should be treated. And I'm so glad that it's kind of, I think in some schools now it's actually a required reading, which is fantastic because it's such a good story. Next on my list is another one that I don't actually have a finished copy of yet, but I do need to get one of those, and that is Moxie by Jennifer Matthew. This is another one where I felt like I wasn't in love with the writing of this book, but I was completely in love with the message of it, and I feel like it's such an important read, and I really wish that this book had existed when I was younger, when I was in high school. I think that this would have gotten me to the place that I am now much quicker than I did, because this book is all about a girl who, she sees all of these things happening to women in her school, and she decides that she doesn't want to take it anymore. Women don't deserve to be treated this way, and she decides to start this zine, and then she kind of sparks this feminist revolution within her high school, and it's so heartwarming. You just leave the book feeling so empowered and so good about how women should have equal treatment. Again, I just really wish that this had existed when I was younger. I really would have liked to have read this much earlier on. Next on my list is The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. This series, I think, is one of the best series about friendship that I've ever read, and I have also reread this series several times since I first read it. The only other books that I've ever reread multiple times is Harry Potter, so this is like probably my second favorite series of all time ever, and I felt like it had a really big impact because I just loved that friendship between Blue and Gansey and Adam and Ronan and Noah. The five of them are so close-knit, and the way that Maggie writes really gets the point across that they are there for one another no matter what, and even when difficult things come up, they still have each other's best interests at heart. It's a really beautiful story about friendship, and I love it. They each have like their own quirks, and they're each kind of odd and eccentric in their own ways, but all together as a unit, they work so well together, and there's really nothing that can tear them apart. There were a couple of other books that I had on my list, but I feel like this is getting a little bit long, so I think I'm going to end here. This was a really thought-provoking video for me to do. I really enjoyed like buckling down and sitting down and really thinking about the first books that came to my mind that really have stuck with me over the years, because I read a lot of books, as you know. I tend to read about 120 to 150 books a year. There are definitely those books that stand out, and these books that I mentioned here are books that stand out to me for one reason or another. So it was really fun to just like analyze the reasons as to why those books stand out. Let me know what books have helped you find your way, or what books have really just stood out to you since you've begun your journey as a reader. I find this topic to be fascinating, and I'm so thankful once again that Penguin reached out to me about doing this video. And again, do not forget to pre-order a copy of I Have Lost My Way by Gail Forman, and to submit your pre-order receipt so that you can get a free copy of one of her other books. And again, those links are going to be down below. But that is all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!